one other person that got fired at Disney during that time was a guy named Michael Giacchino. And if you follow his career, he's a very successful composer. He's done, you've seen his name on Rogue One and The Incredibles and Up. He won an Oscar for it. Well, in those days, he was just an assistant in marketing. Well, he decided to start his own company and he hired me as his first employee. And this was well before we ever worked at Pixar together. And we had such a great time. And it was one of those things that when someone really believes in you, they really give you a certain kind of confidence. And he really brought that back alive in me from, I think, the days of high school when I had a lot more confidence than when I did at Disney. And it's very important, I think, when you get to work with people, that you get to work with people you really like and are either pushing you in a positive way or supporting you in a also a positive way. So though that was a really fun experience, that company did go bankrupt inside of a year due to, I think, too much spending, really, and just inexperience. But I do think it gave me a much better sense of myself collaborating with someone who was game for that. Soon after is when I met with Brad Bird. And this was completely a unique experience for me because Brad was one of those people that was always really talented at what he did, but was not always given the keys to the car to make a movie. And I think there was a lot of situations where he was one of those people who had a lot of opinions and he'd fight back a lot. And so he'd see his colleagues kind of go on, make their successes out of their careers while he was still struggling to make his first movie. The day I met him, he was over at Warner Brothers, which had recently merged with Turner. And sometimes with those big mergers, a lot of the present films and projects fall through the cracks, as did his film Ray Gun. And that's the day I met him, was the day he lost this movie. Now I'm showing him my work. The way he was reacting and just rifling through this work, I didn't think he was paying much attention to anything I was even saying or showing, because he says, you know what you got to do? You know what you got to do to protect yourself around here? You got to, and he was going into this whole thing. It was all his problem, but he was projecting it all on what I ought to be doing. And I left, and that was the end of my Brad Bird experience. And I soon went off to New York City to go work there for a while with Viacom. And while I was there, I was surprised by a call by him that he said he just got this movie Iron Giant going with Warner Brothers and he'd like me to come back. And so when I came back, I had such a great, different kind of experience with him. It was a much more intimate understanding of how movies were made and just the excitement of making something and feeling like you could contribute to something, not in this way where the machine is so big and departmentalized that you only get to do one thing. He often had me doing a variety of things, and he nicknamed me, he would call me like this free range artist that was like kind of walking around the farm and could like kind of tap into almost any department if I wanted to. That kind of thing would never have happened over at Disney. But I think when you learn a lot of different aspects of making a movie, you have a much more dimensional understanding of how all the parts come together. And so that was really inspiring for me. And that eventually led to what was going to be The Incredibles, because he says, in Iron Giant, there's a lot of things I like that you did, but I think on this next movie, I think it's a little more up your alley, and I think you're going to have even more to do with the creation of this, and that's The Incredibles. So we put together a pitch with Tony Fuccelli and presented it to Warner Brothers, and Warner Brothers turned it down. They didn't want the movie. I'm not sure why, because they do have a lot of superhero projects that they also do, but for some reason they didn't want to do this. But Steve Jobs did, and Steve Jobs was very excited, but it had to be a computer movie. So all this was very new to us, okay? Anyway, that was just, I mean, it's kind of a long story, but I mean, just giving you a background on kind of where I came from and my interest in animation. Um, what I brought today, I wanted to show you a few things. Actually, I'm going to pull some of this up real quick. Let me see what I have here. Uh, some of this I may go back and forth in different ways in some of these different keynotes I put together, but this one focuses mainly on my experiences with day and night and kind of the way I was thinking about things during the time we made that. When I was little, I used to watch a TV show on Sunday mornings called the Popeye Hour, where they would show these old Popeye cartoons. I don't even know if they're really shown much anymore, but they were black and white. This is like what, maybe occasionally there'd be a color one. But the host was this guy here, Tom Hatton, who worked for Channel 5. And I guess he I assume he was kind of an actor, but he would dress up in these sailor outfits, and he'd often have his young viewers send in mail where he would have them do a squiggle, which would look like this, something that was just a random nonsense line. And the idea was that he would make something out of this. And the idea was that, you know, it was a fun trick that you would watch. It was almost like a parlor trick, really, watching him do this. And I loved this so much that I used to do this with all of my friends. And at some point, I think I got better at it than he even was. But the idea that you could look at something and see something completely different inside of the picture every single time. And you could even take the same squiggle like I've done here and just kind of see a variety of ideas, even with the same thing. It made me really think about how everybody really sees everything differently. I mean, even if it's the same thing in the world, and I'm sure you've had this experience when you look at a cloud and you see something, but I'm sure you even have this experience when you even meet another person. Some people may think, oh, that guy's the funniest guy I've ever met. And other people think, well, I don't think he's funny at all. He's quite offensive. And you just, it's not that that person's doing anything. It's just the way you're reacting to such a thing. And it really excited me, this idea of perspective. It's something that I've always tried to have on anything I'm kind of working on. It's like, how would I interpret this? How do I see this? So I'm going to go back a couple years, even before Pixar. I had an idea of taking a keyhole, and I thought, wouldn't it be funny to, you know, you could see through the keyhole and see kind of what's in the door. And what if the keyhole had like a personality, was what I was thinking. And this idea just kind of went away, you know, and maybe this idea of the keyhole actually being able to walk around and you could kind of see what was inside the house through just this sort of framed body. This was just a thought I had. And it really went away for years. And then later on, I ended up working at Pixar. Now, while I was at Pixar, all I was doing was The Incredibles. We were working on this for about 4 years, and I was designing the characters with Tony Fuccelli and working on not storyboards in the proper sense, but storyboards in concepts, things they would explore in the ideas of how, you know, something happened in the movie. This look that I was doing was just using paper and magazines and cutouts and forming characters this way. I'd never really done this before, but for some reason, this movie inspired this from me. I think because we had never worked on a CG movie before, I knew that we would be making a photographic movie, but Brad also comes from hand-drawn animation, which has a flatter look. So I thought, wouldn't it be fun to actually take real photographs and then cut them out in this flat way? Maybe this would be the look of the movie. So I went on doing all kinds of character exploration with this. There's Edna Mode. This was kind of fun because, I mean, though she doesn't wear this in the movie, it always made you understand, hey, you know, we could, if you wanted to do houndstooth, you could. because it's CG. All of these things that would be very restrictive in drawn animation were suddenly opened up. But it really didn't mean that you should be putting every texture on every single thing. Sometimes I think that's overdoing it. As a matter of fact, I think this whole group coming from hand-drawn animation almost had this, well, it was almost this leverage over how to design for CG in a way that had a different kind of appeal than I believe even Pixar had done before. Prior to this, I know humans were always kind of in a weird zone. You know, their eyes were too bulgy, their ears were too realistic, but other parts of them were simplified. And so we were thinking we'd want to make them much more elegant, things that were more in tune with how you would actually draw them than how you would actually, you know, sculpt them, if that makes sense. This is an odd one. If your monitors can see this, Rick Dicker, this is a black and white photograph I found of the back of Mike Tyson, the boxer. It's his head. It's a very, very short shaved head, but it gave him this odd, you know, 5 o'clock shadow look, which I thought was really cool. Mirage, this was, I think that was a waterfall I even found for her hair. Syndrome, I found a book on redheads, and you could see that's actually freckled skin. And then of course, like different kinds of costumes through time. I don't know if any of this, maybe some of this kind of came through, but it was a fun way to design for a movie. And I think eventually it kind of turned into more this look. So yeah, Mad Men, a little predating Mad Men, we were doing this one. I would also do this with the sets. It was just you'd find a piece, and usually I always thought of these pieces I'd find almost as if a jazz musician found a melody. You know, you'd kind of put the one thing in, and then the rest of it just sort of found its place inside of this picture, and you just kind of improvise off of that. It was I thought for me it was practical way, and some of these ideas actually did end up in the movie. This kind of hallway with these slats, we turned into a more narrow thing where superhero costumes would be lined, and this amphitheater in the area where she talks with Bob. This all like came out of the idea that it was almost like gods in ruin, and she was like in this Greek amphitheater, even though she was this modernist person. Just a way of thinking about the subject matter and you know, how it relates to the story and who those characters are. What's this? This is an underwater scene when the ship goes into the island. Edna Mode's house, little Edna Mode there. You know, and of course the movie does not look like this. I remember being criticized at one point by Steve Jobs, worrying, like, what is this? Like, is the movie gonna look like this? And I said, hey, Steve, think different, you know? So, you know, eventually I think he understood, and Brad always understood that this was development art, okay? And after that, we worked on Ratatouille. One of the things that I collaborated on was this. I storyboarded and plotted the animation for Ratatouille, especially this end title sequence. Nate Ragg did the paintings, and I did the layouts and characters here. But this was a lot of fun, and this was kind of going back to the spirit of Richard Williams, just trying out different things. This was all animated by hand, by the way, and then painted in Photoshop. So as you can see here, this is, oh, wait a minute, where is this? Okay, so yeah, this is what it looked like in rough, you could see. Yeah, a lot of fun. This, you know, I'll show it again if you want to see it again. Kind of this. Anyway, pretty fun. Later on, I started doing work with Doug Sweetland and designing for Presto. This was a lot of fun. And after I had done all this work, one of the you can see these were just kind of fun. This actually was for a storybook that they did while we were making the movie. I don't know if you've seen this. Oh, something's jamming here. I'm sorry. Can I just, let me stop sharing for a second here. Something's not allowing me. Okay. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So, I'm sorry, I kind of whizzed through those. I don't know, maybe you wanted to look at those a little more closely. I don't know if you've seen any of this stuff, but this was from a golden book. Yeah, these were kind of fun. I got a lot of attention during this time, and one of the producers at the studio wanted me to make a film as a short film. Kept following me around and making this expression like the thinker, like I want you to start thinking of a film and do it like really abstract, like all this stuff that you do. And for the life of me, I could not imagine Pixar wanting to do such a thing. It didn't make any logic. Like, why would they want to make a abstract movie? And I kept avoiding this guy, almost like I owed him money, And eventually, he cornered me, and he says, it's like your time. You do it. And I thought, well, I've pitched things before, and sometimes, and I'm thinking of all my history of pitching things, and usually I could get people to laugh at it, but no one would really bite on something that I was interested in doing. And so I thought if I was a little more practical about how I went into this, maybe I could actually get something made. So with this one, I knew you had to go to Ed and John and pitch like 3 ideas, right? You'd have to come in there with 3 different film ideas. And I knew they were very interested in making these stereoscopic movies at this time. This was like such a big deal that if they could like really explore this in a different way, that it was, I don't know if it really is, like they always promised that this would be the next thing, but it made me think back to that little keyhole guy I was like drawing many years before. And I thought, this would actually be a really interesting mixture of 2 mediums. If I was to actually cut out a hand-drawn character and place it inside of a tangible setting, the 3D would look extremely beautiful. Because a lot of times, if you've seen 3D movies, to me, the flat text of the credits against the dimensional background is often the most effective in 3D. And so that's my conceit on how I would do this movie. So I created this, oops, sorry, here we go. I think this is animated. Wait, let me back up. I think this animates, does it? Maybe not, I don't know. Or this guy animates, oh, hold on, I'm sorry. Does that animate? Oh, I don't know. I thought this moved. Maybe it doesn't. I'm having a little glitch here, so maybe it doesn't. So this is supposed to be animated. This was the test that was given, and in prior experiences in pitches to John Lasseter, people who have pitched entire storyboards that were completely done from beginning to end usually did not get a green light. And so I thought of this too. I thought, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm only going to bring in about 12 drawings. And the reason for this is he likes to be a big participant in the making of these pictures. So I brought in these drawings, just a few ideas of what could be fun about a movie about day and night. I didn't even finish this. I literally didn't even finish my presentation, and he greenlit the film right on the spot. And so I was very excited by this. So he asked me to keep drawing. Now, one of the development people at the studio they don't really have a shorts department, but they were encouraging me to do pain gags, things that involved a lot of violence, because they said John really likes pain gags these days. And maybe that was from Presto or Partly Cloudy, where the main character becomes this brunt of many, violent situations. Well, when I did this, he actually was not receptive as much to these kinds of ideas. as he was this one. I had this idea that I said, maybe there's a girl sunbathing. And he says, yes, this is it. This is what you should do, And when he said that, it suddenly, it immediately made me think, I understand how to do this movie now, because even though the whole thing started as a gimmick, when you have this eureka moment, it makes you understand what is the point of all of this, because I could easily just do these as funny little effects. But it was more about how you have two characters that are sharing the same horizon, just as normal people would, but they see it differently. One sees it as night, the other sees it as day. And at first, there's a lot of suspicion around the way the other's view of this world is. But occasionally, you may get a moment where the other gets excited by something the new person has to offer. And so I started brainstorming all kinds of ideas of what is different between these two things. Not only what could be irritating, but what would be exciting about a character who had embodied day or one who embodied night. Whether it's fireworks, these are exclusive to nighttime. You would only see this kind of effect in the night sky. Or a rainbow, this is something you'd only see in the day. Drive-in movies, and a whole variety of these things. And then I started putting labels on these little moments. And this is really how the movie was storyboarded. It was all in color in this way, but me trying to figure out different ways of the characters getting excited by one another, okay? Now, one of my favorite shorts at the studio was Tin Toy, just for its sense of character, and it was just like a very funny cartoon, I thought. I'm sorry, I wanted to let me skip ahead here. I want to talk about this for a second, because when I showed Brad this stuff I was doing, he's always been a big advocate of mine. But a lot of times when I'm drawing, I guess the term would be fail quickly, where you just kind of draw almost anything. And what he was noticing was I drew so many different ideas that he says, you have to kill your darlings, basically, and like, what don't you include? And so I started like getting rid of anything that didn't emphasize the point of someone being intrigued by what another person had to offer. And so if it didn't have that in it, I was putting it in the trash. And I was really trying to be a very good film student during the time of making this. Like things like this, things that didn't further the dialogue. At one point I had like a bum coming out of a bar in the daytime in Las Vegas, even though the nighttime Vegas seems like it's really fun and appealing. It didn't really say anything about anything in the story. Slow moments. Now this was a strange one, because this was something John Lasseter had actually asked me to do. He says, you know what this movie needs? And I say, what's that? And he says, it needs a really good fart joke. And I thought, what are you kidding? And you start to wonder when he says something like that, is this like a test? Like how far I'm willing to bend with you? And so you kind of think, okay, I'll try it. I'll try it out. And I thought I came up with a really good one too, and it wasn't even like, I didn't even want to do this, but I tried to figure out how to do it. And I thought, wouldn't it be funny if one of the characters was eating too much popcorn watching the movie and he started to feel gassy. And when he walked off screen, we see all the helium balloons, those big, balloons that you see in Napa Valley, kind of lifting off in his belly. And the other guy has to hoist him over his shoulder and pat him like a little baby to burp him. And eventually one of the balloons pops and makes that kind of sound. And you see the carriage and everything kind of spinning out. And I was like, now that's a great joke, right? And he didn't even like react to it. Like he didn't even know why I was pitching this to him. And I thought, I think that was, I really thought that was like a test. Sometimes I think he did things like that with people. Anyway, never mind that. Anyway, the later parts of it were like even staging problems. Something like this that may be a good idea inside of a single panel uh, may be difficult to stage for the sake of framing or speed of which the objects in the background were moving. So that didn't work. And things like this. I remember my technical supervisor, Mike Fu, who was I loved so much because he never thought of one way of doing something was the right way. But when he saw I wanted to put a parade in the daytime, he said, "Do you want this parade or do you want an ending to your movie?" Like it was going to be one or the other. And so that kind of pragmatic thinking, uh, I'm not against any of that. I'm always very flexible in regard to like how to change something if it's getting better. Even if it's a matter of money in this case, you could always come up with another idea. So then I started thinking, now I know what I don't want, what do I want? And one thing I knew I had to do was, even though they were going to be different as a daytime character and nighttime character, they should have distinguishing features regardless of those night or daytime lightings. So we made one guy's nose round and the other a long nose, so you could tell. And this really benefited the ending because they switch places. I mean, the idea here was that it's not that one becomes the other necessarily. They still have their other distinguishing feature. It's just that when you actually embrace what someone else has that's different than you now it's like in you too. You know what I mean? That was sort of the idea of them switching places. They're not really switching, but they have a different perspective on the world having known the other person. Okay, so there's that. And that just went on as far as ideas go. But this stuff is now technically how are we going to make the movie? We realized we had to build a landscape that was going to go into these characters. And with this effect, I'd seen things like this before. I don't know if you've seen any of Magritte's paintings, but he'll play with negative space in this same way. But no one I had ever seen had done this animated. And I thought this would be really fun to, play up framing and also kind of what the characters were feeling by showing off things inside their bodies. In this case, even the use of the 3D. If you had ever seen this film in 3D, it's kind of fun because the earlier parts of the film, actually the 3D looks flatter. And I wanted that because the characters were only concerned with what was on the surface. But the more they got invested with the other, the deeper the actual 3D effects would work. And this shot would probably be one of the deepest, where they actually even penetrate the characters. All kind of a symbolic use of the 3D, and again, this would be a shot that looked like it went on an infinity practically. Films that had inspired me. If you've ever seen this film, The Dot and the Line, it's an unusual, one-of-a-kind movie that Chuck Jones had made. I don't know if it exists on any, I've never actually seen this on any discs or any, I don't know where you'd find this other than YouTube, but they used to show this on TV, and it was really a love story between this Dot and the Line, and the Dot was kind of an aloof, girl that liked this squiggle-looking character, and the Line was this very insecure guy who had to learn how to develop himself before he really could even be loved, if that makes sense. And so he becomes capable of doing all these beautiful things with his body, as you see here in this kind of spiral that he's got here at the end. That really inspired me. And the thing I liked about that, it had a different depth to it than you're accustomed to seeing in a cartoon. Though this film, I think, for the most part, is very burlesque looking, extremely broad drawings, even the animation is almost like taffy. I wanted this moment, if you remember the film, where Wayne Dyer, who used to be a very famous public speaker, he would often hold on one second. I'm so sorry. 1 second. Oh, he would often do these wonderful things on PBS. I don't know if he rings a bell for all of our audience here, but it was someone that my mother would listen to often. And I remembered he had talked about the fear of the unknown on one of his albums. And I was so curious about this that I called him up and asked him if we could put this in the film. And he was very open to doing this. And so this is the guy, if you've ever seen him, I don't know. But this was the thing I was hoping to get to feel a little more like the Dot in the Line, where it was a sudden contrast in the style of the film that makes the film have a completely different vibe than it did as you were watching it throughout. I don't know if you guys want to take any break, or you guys, or carry on. Ben, do you have any thoughts, or?
We're fine, but if you want to take a couple minutes.
I'm okay. This is probably just a few more minutes, this section.
Sure, let's just keep going through this.
Okay. So the people at Pixar, they had never done a film using these techniques, but they kept saying, oh, this is going to be hard. It's going to be like 3 movies in one. And what they meant was not only would we have to render an entire film in daytime, we'd have to render the whole movie again, all the same sets, everything in nighttime as well. And then this third component of having a hand-drawn element drawn on top. I think in the end, yeah, that's true, but I don't know if that really makes it like 3 movies in one necessarily. It's not like we had to. That was really the issue. I think the issue was hand-drawn animation, and a lot of people had not. I mean, even though this is my style of drawing, which I think is very simple, I think it could actually be deceptively simple. And I think animators who have not drawn in 10 years, which were most of the people at Pixar, some of them were very excited. Some of them were frightened to work on this movie because, and you know, it was one of those movies I'd have to say, I'm almost embarrassed to say this, but every shot in this movie was probably animated 4 times. We never got it right once. It never, nothing came off right. It was so awful, actually, to watch. If you saw the first pass of this, you would have thought I was going to get fired because it was so much jibber jabber, and it was just a mess. And of course, here I'm going to take you through this. This is like, oh, here we go. I'm sorry, Ben. This is glitching one more time. Let me see what I can do here. It's jammed a bit here.
Okay, no worries.
Okay, here we go. Yeah, a lot of cleanup. That's another issue. Okay, so that was a very difficult thing to mix together. I would almost say it was difficult because we couldn't see the 2 mediums laid over each other. You'd have a background that was animated by someone in a whole different department, and you'd have these drawings done on paper by another person. And so the 2 mediums, you were basically guessing. It's almost like taking a glass of water and another glass of water and just eyeballing your measurement to be equal. Does that make sense? Oh, hold on. So this was not figured out until the film was almost 2 weeks away from getting finished of how we would actually integrate the 2 things simultaneously. But that's why I think we had to animate things over and over again. This was one of the first, oops, sorry. Let me see how this works. Let me see if this works here. That's not. To play. You know what? I don't think that one's going to play. Let me see. That's not going to play. It was almost like we were making a movie with a character fused to the lens, and so they were looking out onto this field. Now, I had taken a trip on my honeymoon just before we did this film, and the cab driver that was taking us back to the airport just wanted to give us a stop. He just thought this would be fun. We didn't ask for this, but he did. And he took us to this Knights of Malta, and it has a keyhole. And if you look through this hole, you can see the Vatican. like perfectly framed. I mean, this is real. It's so beautiful. And this actually really inspired me, because I was thinking immediately how the movie, this is exactly what the movie would be doing. You'd just be moving this keyhole around and just revealing whatever you wanted. So that was like inspiring, just in the fact that it could really happen. The layout of this movie was unusual too, because the characters were also 3D set apart from each other, even though they were flat. As you could see, those glasses represent our camera, and that background of sheep represents our CG. This is a weird, I don't know if you have sound on this. Can you guys hear any of this? Not that it matters. On the left of frame, you could see that's what the movie looks like. And on the right, this is like a side view of what kind of things were happening behind the scenes. So anyway, yeah, you can see that camera is moving around quite a bit, even though it's not really apparent when you're watching it as it's supposed to be watched. It's a lot like these illusions that you probably have seen. They only work from one angle. And so our set was designed to do a similar thing with certain camera angles, so that it would always frame something at the right size. And this was a very large set, though simple in its rendering. It's really a lot of grass. We had one guy who only did grass on this movie. There was so much grass in the film. Whoa, what's going on here? Wait a minute, hold on. Oh my God, sorry. Having a little problem. Okay, there we go. So yeah, you can see how long this set goes. Yeah, is this another? Oops, let me see what this one is. This one's kind of interesting, just in seeing how it. Even see how the camera kind of shifts, in a strange way to kind of find this composition. It, in a way, almost looked like the largest miniature golf course. This whole set. And so, like I was saying, doing this animation, this was by hand in its own vacuum, let's say, sort of guessing where things were going to be. You'd then do it again with the person. You'd lay in, see, nothing worked. It's like the speeds of things weren't setting up the right spacing for those characters. And then we try it again, and maybe we got the characters right, but the landscape ran out, so we'd have to stretch the landscape again. Then eventually it kind of worked. But this went back and forth. I'd say this one shot, I think, was a minute, maybe. Sometimes these longer shots take a long time. This one, I think, took almost as long as the rest of the film did to animate, just to get this right, even though it doesn't really seem like much. And the only thing I'd have to say is just that we had such a great team of people that put this together. And the reason I think they were such a good team is that a lot of people could have walked into this project hating it because of all the things that were so unknown about how we were going to do it. And I've seen people like that. Fortunately, a lot of people at Pixar always seem game for such things. And it reminded me of something that Wayne Dyer, he wrote this to me in a note after he did the project. And he says, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And I thought that was very true, and it felt very much in line with the thing I was always doing anyway in regard to these squiggles. So that was a great experience, and that's the end of this keynote. I just wanted to share that idea with you, and how we crafted that picture. If anybody has any questions, feel free to open up. I'm welcome to that now if you wanted, about this in particular, or anything
Someone
else.
says, what did you learn working on Day and Night that you took to your other projects?
Well, I think it was really about staying on point. And it's strange because in other projects, when I'm hired as a development person, that's not what they hire me for. Staying on point is something when you're directing a movie you have to do. It may not look as fun to do that as it would to be, hey, what about this idea? What about that idea? You know, it's almost like there's a phase space to making the movie. And as you figure out one phase, the whole thing shrinks. And then the next phase, it's like there's a certain kind of decision making or additions to your idea that you have to narrow in on. You can't keep opening it up. And I've noticed a lot of times certain executives in studios, they only want to keep it opened up. And I would think that would be the opposite, because it costs a lot of money to always keep it open, and it's never clear when the movie will actually get finished. And I'm not sure why people, I think they just don't want to commit to something ultimately. But I do feel like that's something I really did not possess until I started making this.
Can you talk a little bit about the sound design for Day and Night?
Oh yeah. So Gary Rydstrom, Gary, if he was at Pixar and had done sound design on many of their films. He's probably most known for the sound design of Titanic and Saving Private Ryan and the Jurassic Park. Those are some big ones that he did. He was one of the few people that I think really grasped what we were trying to do, because I said, wouldn't it be interesting to have an atmospheric sound of nighttime and daytime, but actually play them in stereo, as if when they change sides, you could hear them change sides in the speakers. And it really excited him, and he came up with a lot of concepts behind how those sounds were achieved. And they were really, again, not unlike the picture, which was an exaggeration of what the character was experiencing. So, you know, if the character was mad, we might put a train passing by, even if you never saw a train. It was just something that gave you a little subjective clue into their emotions. And that's the way the sound was created. And that was a lot of fun. What was fun about the movie, it was like a novelty. It was almost like a little wind-up toy. It doesn't, you know, it's like a, you know, it's not, there's nothing practical about this. It was fun just for the sake of experimentation.
How did the higher ups stay confident moving forward with a pitch for a film that wasn't fully fleshed out?
Well, I think with John Lasseter, it was really him. I'd say he was my best collaborator. Not that I worked with him daily. I probably only saw him 7 times out of 9 months in the period I worked on it. But because he wanted to see it so bad, that's what gets the movie made. I always think it's like him. It's like if he's at the finish line, just cheering you on, just keep running towards me. I already know this is going to work. You just have to keep making it. And if I didn't have him there, I don't think we would have made the movie. I think a lot of people were very perplexed. Like, what is this thing? What is this, Teletubbies? I don't understand. Like, they thought there's TV screens in the stomach or whatever. And so there was it was almost like irritated. I thought that I was even doing this. And it wasn't until it was finished that I think a lot of those people ended up thinking, oh, that was really different, and um, I, I could understand why, though. It's not clearly. It's one of those things you have to visualize more explicitly for someone to get on board. But I think because he's an animation person that runs the studio, uh, that's really the difference. He like I said, he's already at the finish line. He saw the whole thing before I even did. That makes sense.
Yeah, nice. All right. Let's keep moving forward for now.
Okay. All right. Let me see. Wait, I'm gonna get rid of. Oh wait, that's not what I want to get rid of. Let me move something else here out. What did I bring? Let's see what this one is. No, not this one. This one. Let me see. This is kind of fun. Am I sharing still? Is this a black screen? Okay.
Yes. Yeah, you're sharing.
All right. Okay. Well, this stuff. I brought some things that had inspired me, or just things just to discuss that I think are good. If you're a young character designer, if that's maybe the place most of you want to head into, it's just some ideas and things that I thought were done successfully and why they were being done. I thought one of my favorites is Hal Hirschfeld. I always liked his drawings. But what I was always amazed at is, people always think of this aspect of his drawings having these lines that are kind of intersecting with each other in this way. And I know he didn't only do this, but what I love about what he was able to do is the feeling you can get off of some of these drawings. This one I really love because it's a thin line, and just the choice of what he's doing with his lines to describe who those characters are. It's not just for the effect of drawing a pretty drawing. I mean, it's Ginger Rogers and Fred Astaire, and this idea of drawing a thin line gives this thing a weightlessness that would feel wrong otherwise. And even the idea of twisting the lines around, like in these ways, they almost look like they're just wire, kind of like making the appendages, also gives it this strange sense of movement, as if they're twirling without it being any more than a single picture. And then on the other hand, you have this, which is Pavarotti. And I love this one. A complete opposite. I mean, you feel the weight of this just by the way he's using even the ink, the choice of the angle. It's down low, but he's also having Pavarotti break the frame, which is really cool in showing off his size. It almost you could almost hear his voice coming out of this drawing. I love this kind of thinking. I always like this, whether it's in a movie story or just in drawing or a painting or music. Anytime they're trying to play with the medium in a way to reflect either the personality of the character or the story itself. This is another one I loved of Pavarotti. If you ever saw The Three Tenors, that's Placido Domingo and Carreras. Is that how you say his name? I think. And Pavarotti, and it's funny. The other two are, you can see they're really singing till they're blue in the face here. And Pavarotti hasn't even sung yet. And he's got this great look as if he's going to blow them away within 1 minute. It's just yeah, go, Harry, carry on, guys. But in a minute, I'm going to just like knock you off the stage. And it's a great observation of his personality. I mean, he could have also had him join in as a singer, but truly, if you've seen these performances, there is a difference between Pavarotti's power and everybody else, if that makes sense. And I think something like this really shows that. James Earl Jones. I mean, look at this. I mean, this one has so much weight to it. You again feel the voice coming through this guy. The hands are practically bigger than his whole head. I mean, I don't know, even the clenched fists, all of that stuff gives it a different kind of power than if he tried a different pose, you know? The opposite, this is the flip side. This is John Lithgow, very spooky John Lithgow, completely opposite of James Earl Jones. It's like hollow. I mean, the fact you don't see the hands, there is so much negative space in this one. You know, you get the impression he's folding his arms, but you don't really, I mean, if you were to just look at that area, it doesn't look like anything but a figure eight. Just genius, I think. And then again, that sense of movement, Danny Kaye here, the idea of drawing all these different poses in one guy gives you an impression of what Danny Kaye must be like. You know, he can't sit still, or he's active. He's a very active person. I think when you think about drawing your characters, a lot of times people get hung up on just the anatomy of things. And that is good to know, but I also think that doing what Hirschfeld's like doing here is more important for really engaging your audience, because this is the stuff that people are really uh, absorbing when they're looking at a picture. They may not even know how to articulate it, but they are recognizing a person when they see something done like this, opposed to something that's just about getting, you know, the form right. If that makes sense. This is so incredible of an idea, this one of Ira Gershwin. The fact that the piano is bent itself, it almost gives you the lyrical feeling of what the music is sounding like. So smart, you know. And then in this one of FDR, using his bags under his eyes to describe the flag. I mean, that's kind of a fun symbol. And I wanted to show you some more stuff with this kind of symbol stuff. It's kind of fun. What do you think of this one? This is not Hirschfeld, but what I like, I mean, it's the idea of even introducing color as a character, something that tells you what this personality is like just through these choices of color. Lucille Ball, Ellen. I mean, it's really funny. I don't know what her eyes are made of. They look like buttons, or yeah, buttons and candy for a mouth. I don't know if that's spaghetti in her hair. This is a guy named Hanok Piven. I don't know if you've seen his work. He's from Israel, and he visited Pixar one day. But I love his stuff. It's so spot on every time. That's Risco again. Great color. Cher, unusual, you know, choosing the purple hair. I don't know if she ever really did that, but Little Richard. This one's Howard Stern with this pickle. And then he does weird things like this, where he'll actually use food. Eminem, he uses a toilet in his mouth, and M&Ms, look, they're actual M&Ms in his eyes. But it does look like him. George Bush. This isn't a very good copy of it, but these symbols are so funny. He's using bazookas, Bazooka Joe, bazooka bubble gum for the eyebrows, if you could see that, and a dart for the nose. And it does feel like the proportions of his face, but the idea of using things that look like a child's game with terms like bazooka and darts and things that are weapons, it gives you a perspective of how he's thinking of what he's doing, if that makes sense. He's playing with these things, you know. Other presidents, this is Ralph Steadman, who is very famous for doing Richard Nixon, and you could really tell how he feels about Richard Nixon in the way he draws. This is so different than Hirschfeld's interpretation of people. I could never imagine Hirschfeld drawing such an ugly caricature of anyone. I don't know if he hates anyone this much, but a lot of times you do see this, especially with politicians. I know now this isn't so much a caricature, but you could see Trump. A lot of people have done him. Risco does him, like this one's much slicker, but then Piven does him, and look at this. It's like he's just using a slice of meat. Now I don't know who was the first to do this, but you'll see more and more these meat sculptures of Trump. And it kind of does look like, I mean, even the hair is odd with these banana peels. This one, have you ever seen this? That's a lot of ham. But they're really amazing drawings. Anyway, let me go on a little bit. Outside of just like those kind of observations of using symbols, one other thing I thought was something I always feel like I'm aware of is like, what are the characters wearing, and like the function of these things for the film. This one is a classic. I think what's great about the coloring of this is they look like people who came from the earth. They work in the earth, and so these colors they chose are very earthy. Sometimes I don't know if people, maybe more so on television animation, are inclined to do something like this. A lot of times I think the colors don't match, you know, the idea of what they are trying to say about the character. You know, this guy's really different. I mean, the fact they chose is the opposite. I mean, it's like a little more like plaid and a shiny blue tie and that lather of blonde hair, all those things that feel very outgoing and broad. Or even the clothing being too small just to accentuate the size of a character. This is a Jack Davis drawing from Mad Magazine. Graphics on clothes. This is kind of fun. Just the idea of, you know, this woman from the States in France here. This immediately tells you something about her. You know, that she's from the States. Even her haircut it's just different in regard to, you know, her place in this setting. Ghost World, I love these costumes. And notice the two girls in Ghost World, if you've ever seen them. One has, they both look complementary of each other, but one is a little more exaggerated than the other, and that's the lead character. And she's the one who I think who has the more troublesome time acclimating to the rest of the world once they graduate high school. And that's like very clear in the clothing that she's wearing. Sometimes even just the graphic of, I mean, Spike Lee wearing this Robinson to give you a sense of history in regard to his stance inside of this city, in this movie rather, that he's working inside of. If this is the best picture I could find of this, but there's a movie called The Conversation about surveillance. And what was so fun about this thing is Gene Hackman's wearing a coat throughout the movie that when lit a certain way, you could see through the coat. You could actually see that the guy who's surveying other people is paranoid that he himself is being surveyed. And they do this visually. Even though the surveillance is mainly audio in this movie, they were very clever in costuming him to add to his paranoia by seeing right through his own clothing throughout most of the movie in this way. Really clever thinking. What is this? Sweet Charity. I mean, these women, I mean, they're very, you know, you don't want to mess around with these women. You know, they look really tough, but enticing at the same time. You kind of know who's boss here. Napoleon Dynamite. It almost looks like they just pulled out whatever clothes they found the closest to them, you know, before they went out to school. But these are extremely deliberate outfits that this movie was picking. I mean, the girl in this shot, I couldn't get the right shot, but she typically wears her ponytail sort of off to the side, which really to me describes like the tone of that, not just that character, but the whole movie, that everything's a little off center from what would be normal, you know. Again, like elegance, you know, It just draws you in this way. I mean, just like those drawings I was showing earlier. The thinking behind this stuff is really, you know, spot on. I mean, they're not. You wouldn't dress her any other way. You wouldn't dress her in a flannel shirt or anything and get the same effect you need for the movie. You know. Superheroes, you know, I mean, there's many ways to interpret like the outfit of a superhero. I mean, this is probably the broadest sense, you know, or something like this. But even this, you know, is kind of this very capable, you know, person. Well, she's not really a true hero. She's more of an anti-hero in this movie. But they all kind of have this capable look, and they're very cool looking. You know, there's a warmth to all of these outfits that makes you, I don't know, feel like a little safe, I suppose, with them. And even this one, this is a little bit different of a hero, but if you've ever seen this movie, you know, he's the hero, you know, but it looks like he's just wearing, it doesn't look like heroic clothing. I mean, he goes into these settings that are very fancy, dressed like this, but I think that's what makes you relate to him most in the movie. You know, if they had him think, oh, I'm in a detective movie, I'm gonna disguise myself like the people I'm going to be among, and he doesn't. He stays in his Detroit outfit from beginning to end. But I think it gives you a sense of empathy with this character, not just his acting, but I'm just talking about just the outfit now. Or villains. Here's the broad side of it. This broad, you know, completely dark, scary, skull-faced outfit. This is an unusual one. It's not so much a villain, maybe a monster. But what's interesting about this one is it's benign looking, but at the same time not. There's the stillness of this is upsetting. I mean, anybody that's like staring at you from a great distance down a hall like this, in this perfect symmetry, it does give you the creeps. And there's no blood or anything on this yet, you know. These guys, this, I don't know of any outfit quite like this before or after in a movie, Clockwork Orange. What I liked about this costume is, if you think about criminals, normally they're not trying to be seen. I mean, they're not, they're wearing dark clothes, so they are invisible, you know, when they're making their escape. These guys are so brazen, they're wearing bright white, you know. It's almost like they're proud of being seen in any one of these situations that they get into. All these extremely deliberate ideas, just in the way they're thinking about the function of their character. Just as a little break here, I just wanted to show you these are some caricatures I did of some people. Maybe you may know some of them, maybe not. These are Pixar employees. This is Andrew Stanton, who directed WALL-E and Nemo, and oh, I don't know, he was involved in so many of the films. This was just me, again, like just using even body language. This is Brad Bird. This one of Brad, I've drawn Brad so many times, but Brad is, it's funny, people always think, why is draw him so short? And he's actually taller than me, but I always draw him this way, mainly because I think of him having a youthfulness of a kid, just in his enthusiasm. So I always keep him as a kid when I draw him, just because I think it's the best way to reflect him. So this is Darla Anderson. She's the producer of Coco. I don't know if any of these faces are familiar to you, but Lee Unkrich, he's the director of Coco. Have you seen him? He's he's the one who's obsessed with The Shining. If you follow any of his, he has a blog on The Shining. Let me see. Pete Docter. You know, I was trying to do these all kind of slightly uniform, but he's so tall. Very boyish, like, you know, even though he's like a 6'5" man. Brenda Chapman. This is Gary Rydstrom. He's that sound designer I was telling you about. This is Lois Scully. She's a lawyer at Pixar. This is Jim Morris. He's the president of Pixar. And this is Brad Lewis. He's the producer of Ratatouille. It's funny when I think about posing, and I'm going to show you this pose, and it's a pointing pose, but then I'm going to go back to Brad. This shows you the difference. Like, this is the pose of this guy. This is like, I'm telling you what to do. I'm telling you where to go. This is where you're going to go. This is more of a suggestion. I'm just going to suggest. I may know better, but I'm not going to impose myself too much. And so that's really like just thinking about it in those terms. Steve Jobs and John Lasseter. Yeah. Anyway, so those are some ideas with them. I'd say, thinking about these characters when we were doing The Incredibles, when you first start thinking of a character, you don't immediately start thinking of all these symbols. You have to really know who the characters are before you even think, how am I going to factor these things in? I'd say sometimes pictures that have very long development phases usually don't know their characters enough yet. That's why they're taking so long in the design of their characters. But if you know who the characters are, they could come up rather quickly. In this case, you look at Mr. Incredible. I was thinking about, Tony and I did these designs, but Mr. Incredible and the other characters, I always thought, wouldn't it be fun to describe who they are through their hairstyles? And in this case, this was like the aging Greek god. I mean, that's why you'd see this character who had almost like a helmet-like head. It's a kind of a strange way his nose, just goes flush right into the forehead. I know some people didn't like that, but it was to look like one of those Roman gods that when they wear those helmets, and even the fact that he was balding, it was almost like a god in ruin. All of even his weight, just these ideas of like one of those statues kind of just fraying at the edges, really. And that was the way we were thinking about showing off that character. That's never said in the movie, but that's the way we were thinking about it. Helen, on the other hand, her hair does this twist. It's like a swoop. It's flexible. It's a reflection of the power that she's going to be using. I mean, she is the most flexible character in the movie. So her hair's also saying this. Violet, another one, this shyness is, shown in just the hair. It's going to be hiding her. Her invisibility is always present even when visible, at least the early parts of the movie. And then you have Dash, which, of course, he's like the kid with the Ritalin and, really, always on. But the hair, again, shows you that even when this character is standing still, the hair is always like swooped completely back as if he's running at like 500 miles an hour. Jack, on the other hand, you have this little kid whose hair is like it's just that little sprig of youth, spring of youth, rather. Like a little, it's always, up. That hair gives you that feeling of a newborn, really. I mean, I don't know many that have that hair, but it just feels right somehow. Also, it looks a little like a flame, like a little one. And Edna Mode, this hair, it looks like a helmet, really. I mean, in a way, it will show you kind of where she's at, even though she's a fashion person. It's like fashion for almost fashion for battle, really. And so this hair kind of defines that aspect of her. Anyway, oh gosh, I found some other drawings here. There was all kinds of drawings that I found. Just functionality of these characters. I mean, the way they're drawn fits the way you're going to animate them. I find so many times that a lot of characters are over-designed in 2D animation. It's not so much 2D animation anymore, but I'd say even 3D animation. They're over-designed. And you look at these old ones, and they really fit their function, and they're really robust. I mean, you could practically pose them in any which way you want, and they work perfectly for the kinds of comedies that they're going to be doing. You know exactly. I mean, the fact this guy's leading with his stomach or whatever, you know, it's a funny idea for a detective or a sexy character. You know, even the colors on this character. Another one, you know, look at these wonderful poses. This is from a film called Rudy Toot Toot. If you haven't seen it, it's really good. You could probably find it anywhere online. Or this kind of an effect. Again, like designing for what the feeling is that you want. Now, these are very different than the previous characters. These are designed to evoke that feeling of awe, you know, of real cuteness to these characters, a warmth to these characters, a tangibility. This character can get hurt, you know, unlike the ones that we saw earlier. Still, though it's complex in its construction, it's presented rather simply. There's not a lot of detail to something like this. Another masterpiece film. I don't know if you've seen this one, The Man Who Planted Trees. You know, a different look. This one's all in colored pencil. But what I liked about this one, again, it's something else. It's like a sense of mystique in this, just in the way they use light on these characters. This is a all handmade animation, but I really like that they're using negative space. Look at that. I mean, you don't even see the outline on this thing, and it just by what's missing gives you a sense of mystique, which really describes who that character is. He doesn't speak much, but he has a big mission ahead of him, you know. You know, again, like to me, this is my favorite kind of a character because it's the most pliable. You could do probably anything with this. It's like reducing everything just to shapes. You know, I tend to see. Let me just show you some of this stuff. I know. I mean, if you've ever seen this movie or some of these films, this was All Dogs Go to Heaven. This is too much. This is like this. I think this is ugly. I think this is too much. There's too many. He's got too many moles. He's got too many like facets. There's too much stuff, and it's almost as if the animators were thinking, hey, you know, what could we add on? What could we make? How could I really make my life difficult today? And it feels like there's way too many things going on. I can't even look at this face and know not just what expression this is, but where to actually look inside of this design. There's too many things going on in it. This I don't know what this is. Like the weirdest looking. I mean, I don't know what this is. Just I'm not even talking about the stories on these yet, but the fact that this really happened, and you know, it takes just as much time to draw this as it does a really good drawing. You know, it's not like this is any quicker to get there. This is a lot of work to even achieve. But if you've seen some of these movies, you know, they're almost have this veneer of good animation because they're full animation. But I wouldn't consider this good animation, and I'll tell you why. I mean, when you look at, especially like this character, this, if we were to look at Bambi and then look at this character, this girl, this character is acting cute. She's acting cute. She's not being cute. Bambi is being cute. He is cute. He is, it's just in his makeup. This is not like that. This is like a lot of extra poses to get you there. And actually, you almost get you get annoyed by this character the more they speak, because they speak to everything's kind of like moving around, you know, they're kind of doing all this stuff, and it's really irritating to watch. So that's stuff you have to watch out for. It's like not truly observed. It's just using a lot of cliches to tell you I don't even know what to look at this idea. Is this a dinosaur, or what is she being handed exactly? But oh my God, this is just awful. This is like a bag of Jelly Bellies just landed in a in a bag of tar. It's like it, and then you just kind of mushed it up. I mean, it's like it's so disgusting looking. I don't know if I mean, I don't know what you're supposed to look at in this situation, because there's too many things being highlighted at once. This is another kind of problem, okay? Uh, Now, though some of these costumes actually could be, they're kind of interesting. You know, they tell you a little about who they are. I mean, I'm looking at this though, and I mean, I couldn't tell you what their personalities really are though, because all of them look like the same aloof kind of, you know, they're not, they almost look like refrigerator magnets is what they look like. They don't look, like I said, functional. I mean, I'm not quite sure how these actually move when you look at them. They're almost too stiff of an idea to play with. It's sort of the opposite of what's going on with the Bluth picks, but you know, it all winds up being the same kind of thing. You know, this one's another one. I don't know. Everything looks like the same. Maybe that's what this is meant to be. I don't know, but they're all the same exact face. They may actually be the same drawing. I don't know, and just kind of cut out. I'm not quite sure. But they're too hard. They're too hard edge and not pliable enough for characters that I think would be what we're after, or what we're talking about as far as like describing personalities. Like, look how great that is. I mean, that's like a great sense of weight, even in its simplicity. That's a Chuck Jones drawing. What else did I bring here? I brought, are you, hold on, I want to ask you guys, are you seeing this strip of all of us on the side here?
Yes.
Okay, is that blocking some of these drawings?
No. It's probably
Oh,
just blocking it on your computer.
all right, okay, good. I didn't know if you were being able to see these. I brought these drawings, a few other drawings of their characters through, I don't know if they're storytelling shots. Yes, I'll call them that. I'll call them storytelling shots because they're little situations. This is something I love to do when I'm designing characters. A lot of times, character designers are not doing this part. You'll see character designers mainly, like I said, doing the anatomy of the shapes and how the whole thing works together. But I think it's good and important to do some of this kind of work too. Usually the story people are doing this kind of work, but I do feel that it helps you understand who the character is if you think of things for them to do. I've done this all through The Incredibles. I wish I had some more of that stuff to show you, but I don't have access to that right now. This artist is named Simpe. He's from France, and he's very famous in The New Yorker. But a lot of this stuff, they're not necessarily jokes. They're just little moments. But I love this. The two kids, it looks like, I don't know, one got their father's clothes or something, and is the guy, and the other one's the girl, and they are putting on a little show or a dance here. It's just a very charming idea. He does another one here where all the husbands apparently are fishing, and it's very boring. They're just kind of all disconnected from each other, while their wives are all interacting with each other at the other end of the boat. You know, which again, it's like almost a allegory. This may be a cover of the New Yorker. I'm not sure, but it's very good story. And like I said, it's not a laugh, not a big laugh, but it tells you who the characters are. Um, Irony, you know, love using irony everywhere I can. I mean, all these people who are protesting love all look, if you look at their faces, they all look like they're going to kill each other because they don't agree on the other's view of what that actually means, you know. I think what's happening, actually what's happening, I think one half is women, the other is men, is what's happening. This guy, you know, peeking at the magazine, the woman, the girly magazine, subtle kind of joke. What he was so famous for in his drawings was all of this great detail, But and unlike the Bluth piece, this detail is all contained into a shape. And you can see this magazine stand is like its own little shape that is there to frame this idea, this one gag. And he's drawing all that detail, but because it's contained in a shape like this, it makes his pictures way easier to understand. Does it again here in this library shot. Look at this great idea. Again, irony. He's one of the great ironists in these single panel drawings for New Yorker. I don't know what era this was drawn in, but very, very clever. Again, like it's not a joke, but you know, it's this woman just wading in the lake here. You just get a feel for this one. It almost has the feel of an old master's painting without being painted. It's just a simple sketch. But her testing the water, lifting that gown. This idea is like what's he accentuating again, like using the puddles to show off those red elements of her dress more distinctively. It's not funny, but it's kind of interesting. I sometimes like to try things like this. They may or may not end up in a movie, but most of what I'm doing isn't end up in a movie. Not everything, but that's because you're just trying out different ideas. Another guy, this guy, I'm just showing you this guy, Peter Arno, for composition of how he arranges things on a page. Now he only worked in this format, this not New Yorker covers only, but this sort of portrait style format. But I was always amazed at his ability to convey a joke, you know, like he always knew what you were looking at first, what you were looking at second. I mean, it works almost like in a triangular movement. You follow up the man's chest right to his eyes, back down to the girl, and then it jets right across, and the last person you see is his wife in that corner there. It's absolutely perfect because the wife is the last part of the joke here, you know, and she's not interested in him or what, you know, but it's composed perfectly. Again, this is another, you know, bit of irony in these cartoons. He's seeing himself, this guy. It's funny how you go right to him. And I'm not sure why that is, but it could be because the expression, I think, is different. I think that's what's like narrowing in on that guy. He's looking at himself, basically. Anyway, great composition, I think, you know. These are some paintings that, I mean, these aren't cartoons, but why I pick some of these to look at, because they also tell you so much about these people. This one, I remember growing up with this around our house. My mom had a framed picture of this. This is The Lovers by Pablo Picasso. I had a chance to see the real one in Washington, D.C., but the day I was in there, that wing of the building was closed, so I didn't get to see it. It was unfortunate, but it's very big. I think it's almost as big as a wall, this thing. But you look at that face. He looks like he really loves her. I mean, it really, and the way he's holding her, it tells you something about this guy that I think is just is perfectly thought out. I mean, just the way the eyes are all over her face only, you know. This one, here's the opposite kind of thing. Now, some people, I always think people think of this one, you know, it's been so parodied, this one, but I think people think of them as married, but she almost looks too young for this guy. And look at what he's looking right at us, but she's not. She's looking away from his like intention, like whatever he's like got in mind here. It feels like he's got very definite ideas. But look at her eyes. She's kind of looking away. There's some great details that kind of tell you a little something about her. if you look on her neck, you could see this cameo that she's got. And if you get close to this painting, I can't on this. I didn't get an enhancement of this. It's a Gibson Girl. It's like one of those real sexy Gibson girls that you would see in the Victorian era, which almost seems out of place to everything that the rest of the painting is saying. Look at her hair. It's tight. It's tied back, but there's one part of her hair that's loose, which is again like you can almost read her mind by what's like kind of just around the vicinity of her. The Gibson Girl, the bit of loose hair, and then back on the porch, just over her shoulder, are a couple potted plants. They're not over his shoulder. They're over her shoulder. It almost suggests that she feels locked in somewhere, that she does not feel like she belongs. She wants to go somewhere else, that this life holds for her, but can't seem to say anything about it with this guy in the way. I mean, look at that fork he's got, for God's sakes. But it's that kind of, it's very clever, it almost is like a cartoonist conceived something like this. Pose, even with this glamorous kind of outfit, this woman, she looks drunk. I mean, it's funny, for all this fancy gear. There's almost something like you almost want to turn away from her. She seems like she's going to become your best friend in a minute and embarrass you or something. She seems like she could be I don't know, like I don't know what it is about the eyes. They almost seem drunk or something like that. But just great description in contrast in clothing with the attitude of the character. You never really see that combination that much. Again, the opposite. I mean, this guy almost seems like he can't be trusted. Concealed hands. He looks like he may even be holding a gun. I'm not sure. I mean, you rarely see a coat that long. I mean, he's covering so much of himself up, and the fact that it's in profile is another choice, that they're hiding half of who he is. Just a thought, that could be something that they're thinking about when they put this painting together. This is Toulouse-Lautrec again. This one, I love this painting. I've seen this one in the New York Met. This is one of my favorite paintings. I mean, that is an expression of resign. I mean, it almost seems like he should be terrified out of his wits, but he's already come to the conclusion that there is nothing I can do in this situation. I mean, his only escape is that boat back there. It looks like they're headed for a typhoon, mast is gone. There's sharks. I mean, what an expression. Great choice. I mean, it's much more compelling than if they had drawn him panicked, I think. What else? Was that it? I think that was, oh wait, and then I did mine. Okay, so there's that. I don't know if you wanted to have any questions again, or I could show you some of the drawings I had been doing recently that Ben has been putting up, and then some. These, I'll tell you what, this is the last thing on this section before we can break. These are things I've been doing. These are drawings that I have done of my two kids. They're not realistic, but my wife had asked me, they're going to be going to camp, and I'd like you to draw little pictures on their bags before they leave, on their lunch bags. And I said, okay, I could do that, And so every morning before the lunch was packed, I'd take the lunch bag and draw something funny. Usually what I thought was something connected to camp. And after a while, these pictures, she was saying, you should post these on Instagram. And so I started posting them. And they got a little popular, and some people were asking, oh, I'd like to buy one of these. And I'd say, well, they don't exist. I'm sorry. They're garbage. They were thrown away. I took the picture and now they're gone. And so they were like, what are you talking about? Like, what, and I got thinking, well, maybe I shouldn't be throwing these out. And so I started drawing these, not on the paper bags anymore, but on this craft paper. And so they were just little situations of what I see my kids kind of experiencing as we kind of do things throughout the year. You know, this one, you know, the little chicken for Easter, he gets like, you know, he came out of the egg just as they were dyeing the eggs. Now this is very much my daughter's personality. Ah, you're okay. You know, often puts him in, you know, predicaments, or just that sort of innocence that kids only have. And maybe not so innocent. I mean, just the idea, yes, I will burn you when I shoot you, is sort of the thinking. Well, this was a Christmas, this was like an earthquake, the Richter scale, like throwing all of the all of the ornaments off the tree. Some things I actually have seen. I have seen something. I'll just draw them. Sometimes I'm making up more than, you know. They have a cousin too. You know, there's a sense of jealousy, I think, in kids, especially with a new one. You know, or inventiveness with kids, playing different things. Some of these are just jokes, but you know, I mean, and some of them have more character than others. He dressed up as Luke Skywalker one year. So, but I'm not dirty, I'm just tan. Or this was kind of fun, her on Halloween, you know, and then later, you know, she's getting their candy rather than giving it. She is kind of a little cheat sometimes. And this one, I always thought she really knows what she wants. You know, she just knows. You know, I want it all. Basically, is what she's saying. This was kind of funny, just in describing a character without the character being there. You know, this is almost a reaction to the character being there. Yeah, her Toblerone chocolate bar, 20 pace. They're obsessed with Hamilton right now, watching that. This toy didn't last long in our house. I don't know if you could see this well, but yeah, this is very much in character. This, like, if I was saying, this is a character one. If you can see, do you see this, Ben?
Yeah, it's the
You're not,
one where she's walking across the
yeah,
sand castle.
covered. Okay, so yeah, this was very much. I'm going to walk well out of my way just to make sure you're not having as much fun as me, which is which is very much the way she is. You know, the other day, I don't want to say these influenced anybody. I'm not quite sure, but I was rolling a bunch of posters Ben gave me into a tube the other day, and I was on the bed, and the entire chest of drawers, a very big one, fell on me while I was, I mean, it was just like crazy. And that's because she had opened all the drawers to the cabinet, and the whole thing, the balance went off, and then it just crushed me the other day. But I don't know if that's because she saw this drawing or not. It could be my fault anyway, even though she did that. But thinking that, hey, I could walk on this thing. Luckily, she wasn't hurt. And then this one, just using, I mean, he lost his teeth. Just a fun play on ideas. Anyway, so a lot of those ideas, those are some things that I thought, just some thinking around character designing. And I put together only a couple of assignments if you guys want to do any drawings, if you'd like. I don't know if we want to take a break and do that. Does that sound
Yeah,
like
let's ask some quick questions, and then I
okay?
think we can take like a 20-minute break or something. So if anybody has any questions on the recent character design stuff in the slides, go ahead and type it in the chat.
Okay. Okay,
Can
you
you,
want me to read these or?
oh, wait, sorry. I think I got cut off real quick. Yeah, if anybody has any questions right now for the recent character design slides that we just saw, feel free to type it in the chat. And then after these questions, we'll take a short break.
I'm sorry, Ben, do you want me to read? I'm sorry, which ones? Some
I
are
could,
questions, or do you
yeah,
want?
I could read these, or you can read them as well. And then,
I saw one here. It was talking about. I think I did one with a ballpoint pen on tattoos. That was something I actually used to do as a kid. I would draw tattoos on people with ballpoint pens. I didn't charge them, but it was just fun to do. I don't know if anybody here is a tattoo artist, but
doesn't seem like it.
here's one. It says, "Do you think taking caricature class is good training?" I don't know. I've never taken a class doing that, but I guess it depends on who you're learning from. I suppose with that, it's a hard one because I know there's different kinds of caricaturing. Some of the ones I was showing you, like Hanok Piven, that's a completely unique look where he's using found objects to describe these personalities and faces. He's got more going for him than that, though. He's a very good observer. Uh, that you probably won't learn from someone unless you're learning from him directly. Um, but I think that's something you can do. I mean, if you observe a lot of varied artists and just try to draw out the distinguishing features, that's a start. As far as reducing them, I think that's like something you can continue to play around with until that becomes much more in your nature. My drawing, I always feel like I have different levels of drawing. My default is usually really simple. I mean, and a lot of times I'm using nothing more than a pencil or a pen, and I'm not trying to do much with the drawing outside of convey an idea. That's mainly because of the kind of work I'm doing. We try to do it quickly so that we can get a lot of ideas out and get it. Yeah, sorry.
One of them says, what would you say your understanding of situations in detail was learned or innate?
Maybe both. Maybe both. I think I always had a good sense of humor. If you look at my children's, when I was a kid, if you look at the drawings I did as a kid, they would often be comments on what I saw going on in my own house. I wish I brought some of that, but I don't have any of that here. But just taking, I mean, even one time, I remember one time meeting a real cartoonist when I was 10 years old for the first time. It was because the school had done some kind of a big party that a few of the mothers had contributed to helping out with. And as a gift, they asked me, I was 10, they said, would you draw some like Christmas cards for them, just as little thank yous? And I drew a different cartoon card for every one of them. And one of them, I don't know, I'm trying to think of some of like one of them was kind of funny. Like it was like the deer. Santa came out to the sleigh and there was just on strike signs in each position. They weren't going that night. And one other one was like Santa Claus. He was on the roof, but there was like a tiny little pipe, like one of those stovetop pipes coming out of the roof, and the Santa Claus is wondering, how am I going to get into that? And anyway, there were just like little simple jokes like that. But this woman who got one, her neighbor was this very famous cartoonist, Carl Hubenthal, and he saw those and he said, "Oh my God, this little boy is ironic, and it would be nice to meet him." And so he had me over the house, and I got to see all of his drawings and how he worked, and it was just so inspiring. It's funny, even at 10 years old, what you remember and how it was such a strong memory to me, just seeing the way he drew, and he gave me a drawing before I left. I never kept in touch with him, but I do think he lived into his 90s ultimately. He was really talented guy. Uh,
Um,
but but no, I don't know. I think learned, yes. I think I became more observant just in meeting this one teacher named Bob Winquist, thinking in those terms, what to look for. And another one was a guy, Joe Grant. And Joe was one of the original Disney guys who designed the characters for Snow White. I got to work with him at Disney. He was the mentor to me, and he really encouraged this kind of observation, things that weren't necessarily funny, but just observed.
do you find yourself writing at all, or is it all sort of just sketching with pictures?
No, all right. I was dyslexic and probably still am. I guess you'd consider that as a kid. So I really could not read at all till in those days you were just considered dumb. They didn't have a word for it, but I think being dyslexic, it made it very difficult for me to read. I couldn't read until I think I really started to learn it when I was almost 10. I couldn't read it all. I mean, if I was to look at a page of writing, it would just look like wallpaper to me. It didn't look like I couldn't lock in on any given sentence. And so it took me quite a while before doing that. But I do like writing. I think I'm not fast at it, but I do like doing it. I think I like using, if creating something, it's fun to use different aspects of your imagination in different ways. I think it helps.
Um, so between the simple and more complex designs you shared, do you think the quality they all share is functionality? Is that the basic of good design and animation in your mind?
Yeah, I think functionality. I think if in my case, it's is the idea being conveyed clearly. That's usually what I'm after.
When working on a film, how long do you
Um,
take? Oh, go ahead. Sorry. Are you
no, go on. Yeah.
okay? When working on a film, how long do you take to do research slash understanding the character before drawing?
Um, well, I know a lot of people do research and they do it before they even do one drawing. I actually do it the opposite way. And the reason I do this is because this is something Brad Bird, whether he knew it or not, he kind of taught me to do this. When we were doing Iron Giant, there's a scene called Duck and Cover, which you see the little boy watch an old movie, and it's like showing how nuclear bombs are preventable if you get under a desk. And he said, I need a little movie here. Can you make a little movie here? And I said, yeah, yeah. And I said, I know those films. I remember loving, yeah, those are really fun. Those old hygiene films. And he said, well, don't look at any of them. He just wanted me to kind of go off of my instinct of what I remembered. And because of that, I just made up a whole idea and I pitched it to him. And it was fresh. It was something that was new. It wasn't something that I had seen before. But it's only after the doing of it, he says, now we can look at all the reference. And the reason for that, I said, yeah, if I saw it first, I probably would have just ripped it all off and we would have just said, okay, that's what we're going to do. We're going to do exactly what they already did. But by not looking at the reference first and just kind of using your own instinct, you actually put in a lot more of your own thoughts and ideas in something. And I think the reference is a nice secondary thing to then absorb in so that you make it more maybe accurate to what it ought to be, as far as like the feel or the subtleties of it. Is
Okay,
that
got it.
seem right? Yeah.
No, that was good. That was very good. How are you able to be so versatile when developing each project? When you were breaking down in your slideshow why those designs weren't working, how do you know if it doesn't work, considering each story is different and have different voices?
Um, how do you know it doesn't work? Well, I mean, you know, if you were to think of these pictures as like a meal, uh, you know, when you eat something that's surprisingly complex, but it only had like 5 ingredients or less in it, that's what you want. You know, it's like the wrong choice when they put 20 different things in it, and it's almost uneatable, if that's a word. I don't know. It's like one of those things that I think it's easier to know that when you're eating something because you're actually, you know, able to taste it. But when you're looking at a work of art, it's not as it doesn't grab you in the same way as like, ugh, you know, like you don't feel disgusted by it in that same immediate sense. But I think the same thing is kind of going on because you're not responding to these things. You're not. I don't know. I sometimes think of how strong like an advertisement is when you're like if you're driving. Not all of them are great, but the idea of driving down the freeway at 70 miles an hour and something just passes you and you got it instantly. There's some success to that, you know, and I think that's the same way these movies work. You have to think of a sense of time as well as not just design, but the sense of time that you're going to be like witnessing something, and either you get it or you don't get it, you know, and if you don't get it, it didn't work.
Earlier, you were talking about good designs and bad designs and some examples. I know you showed the All Dogs Go to Heaven, and I get why that's, you know, that was a bad design, but you showed some of those other sort of more simplified characters, and some of that stuff reminded me of sort of UPA characters. Do you have any examples of
Well,
UPA characters that you thought were well designed?
I think most of them were well designed, and I think they're well designed because they were functional. If I mean, even if I think that's the fallacy. I think people think those designs are, oh yeah, that's like a UPA thing, but it's really not. If you looked at UPA, they were so much more pliable. They're using movement. I mean, maybe you could move those characters around if you broke them enough, those other things. But I do feel like the UPA characters are probably closer to the kind of thing I'm doing. They're simple, but they're pliable. You could move them around. I mean, for instance, day and night. I mean, that was the style of that was truly inspired by commercials from the 50s. I mean, it looks like that stuff. I mean, um, those guys are. I don't even know if we had a model. I think I drew all of the keys, but they were. I mean, if you look, they were just like change size, just in importance for whatever idea I wanted to showcase. Uh, that's stuff you don't often see in TV animation. I haven't like watched a lot of uh, contemporary cartoons in that regard. Um, I mean, I've seen all of the Simpsons, but that's not contemporary. I mean, they are still contemporary. They still make them, but uh, I don't know. A lot of them that are these hard edge ones, though, I find them they don't I don't relate or connect to them as characters. Maybe if you were listening to what they were saying, you would get that. But as drawings, I don't connect to them as personalities. Shaun the Sheep, however, you know, that's different. That has a lot of personality. That's not drawn, but it's there's a lot of observed moments in not just the gags, but the timing, the behavior. They're thinking of it in that way that makes it have a connectability, not just an outrageous thing.
Um, Earlier, you talked about Dash's hair and Edna's hair as sort of like a helmet and other sort of metaphors. Do you usually design with metaphors in mind, or like how do you approach
Uh,
metaphors in general?
you know what? I don't know if I'm thinking about that immediately. I think it comes in like again like a secondary thing. You're maybe being instinctive about some of these things, like day and night. I don't know. That was the idea of, hey, you know what? The big idea hits you only like a month or two later when you're thinking they share the same horizon, just like regular people, you know. And so you're thinking that's a big idea. Now I'm going to play with that notion of this being their view. I'm not going to ever say that in the movie, but that's what it is. You know, or those helmet hair or whatever, all that stuff I was talking about. That is not immediately on my mind, but as you start to see these things show up, you look at enough of your drawings and you start to think, what do these things have in common with each other? And once you start to understand what what the commonality is, you understand the whole theme of what you're after. And once that theme hits you, then you're deliberately like active on that idea of putting those things into the drawings or story.
Right.
But they're not things that you talk to the audience about. They're just supposed to be in there subconsciously, and if you ever get it or never get it, it doesn't really matter. You could still enjoy these movies. It's something a lot of times the artists are putting in there to give it a certain depth, you know, regardless of ever discussing it with the audience.
Okay. All right. Let's take a quick break and come back at 3:30.
Okay.
All right.